Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health. And now the host of Here's to Your Health, Yvonne Beauvais.
Hello, how are you today? Our guest today is Rabbi Murray Silberling and his beautiful wife, Dr. Rosie Silberling. Rabbi Murray has been a congregational leader and a counselor for over 40 years, and he's a tremendous amount of experience in counseling, especially in the area of marriage. He's the author of 2 books. His latest book is The 7-Year Contract, and it's Fixing the Institution of Marriage. And for 35 years, Dr. Rosie Silberling has been an educator and a leader in the healthcare profession. Both Rabbi Murray and Dr. Rosie Silberling are now taking their experience and translating it into renewable relationships, which is a new paradigm for the institution of marriage. Heaven knows that our culture needs a change in the paradigm of the institution of marriage. So welcome, Rabbi Murray Silberling, and welcome, Dr. Rosie Silberling.
Hello, Yvonne. It's so good to be here and sharing with you and your audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. It's very nice to be here.
Oh, it's really a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited to share your book with our viewing audience today because so many people are stuck in the area of marriage, and it's the foundation for their whole life. They have their marriage, their businesses, their children, just on and on and on. And when that fails, everything fails. So I'm very excited for everyone to hear what you have to say today. So your subtitle on this book is Fixing the Institution of Marriage. Mm-hmm. And what is it that you see needs to be fixed? And is it only for people that are married?
Well, for myself, after the dissolution of my marriage, that 32-year marriage, I went through a whole crisis of trying to understand what went wrong with marriage and more, a larger philosophical view. And in doing this, I began to see what was going on, and I started to study and talk, resetting up the patterns and the paradigms for a marriage that will be filled with wellness and joy and health.
Yes, we need well marriages. That is true. I find you brought up two topics. One was communication, and the other was negotiation. Now, I personally think these things should be taught in school. People don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to ask the right questions. And even if they do, they don't know how to negotiate for what they want. So can you tell us how they can do those two things, how to communicate better and how to negotiate for what fulfills them?
Well, it all comes down, as I write in the book, that it's a part of what we call renewable relationships. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is that there's a lot of communication going on in a relationship, but it's not spoken. And much of it is put under the carpet. Much of it is what we call eggshell issues that we don't talk about in relationships. So what we've done with this book and with Renewable Relationships, which is the kind of seminars and workshops that we do, what this is about is that every 7 years, that's why we call it the 7-year contract, every 7 years, that we go through this period of deconstruction, and reconstruction of a relationship. And in doing this, you really start off anew like you did when you first were going through, premarital kind of things. And you get rid of these eggshell issues. You dig deep into the areas of toxicity, of infection, of places where there are really hurts that have been put under the carpet and hidden. And the communication from that then really comes to a place of intentional renewal.
Right.
And I think for us, it's a part of this paradigm. And it really is, we see it as a new paradigm for health and wellness in marriage. Mm-hmm. And it really comes from the model that we had within healthcare. In healthcare, the way it always worked was the doctors and hospitals dealt with episodic care. In other words, you get a heart attack, you go through some kind of diabetic thing, whatever. Right. And when you did, you go to the hospital, you go to the doctor, they give you some medicine, they take care of you, patch you up, and send you back out again.
That's true.
Well, that wasn't working very well, and it was very costly. So over the last 10 years, especially, all of the medical field, the healthcare field has changed the whole paradigm and turned it upside down, where wellness and healthcare prevention
Yes.
is the key. And that's what keeps us from those kinds of episodes that really bring bad events to us. It's the same thing in marriage. We're trying to turn it around. Rather than waiting till somebody is going to a therapist or a counselor because there's so much miscommunication and
Right.
so much destruction within their marriage, that we're trying to keep it at a level of wellness, of health, of joy, so that they will be able to live a life that is a higher quality.
Right.
And so it really is a paradigmatic change.
So this is the paradigm shift, basically
is.
taking it from crisis to crisis prevention versus acute treatment. And usually by the time you're in an acute stage, it's probably too late. I
It's
would
too
think.
late. And when I talk to marriage and family therapists about this, they're all very excited because they say, we are failing in trying to deal with people that are already spiraling down in
Right.
their marriages, and we have just minimum tools to get them out of that, and usually there's been too much damage
Yes.
in the relationship. If we can take people before they get married and teach them about relationships and give them this paradigm, if we can take them when they're premarital status and begin to set them in the course of a good pattern, and then we can every 7 years go through this process of deconstruction and reconstruction with the kind of communication and negotiation that's needed, it will revolutionize and fix the
Right.
institution of marriage.
So do you see this as you doing this for people, or will you give them the tools so they can do it for themselves?
Well, my book is a very how-to book, and it gives them a lot of tools. We deal specifically, it's a stage-based paradigm or process that they go through. So we see, that's why it's called 7-year contract, because even though when you get married, you say for better, for worse, for sickness and health, till death do us part. But the reality is that 7 years later, you're going to look at that person you married and say, who is this person? There's been so many changes that have
We've all
taken
been
place.
there.
Exactly. How many times have we heard someone say, well, he's not the man I married. She's not the woman I
true.
married. And it's true, because every 7 years, there's major changes that take place. We
Right.
change continually. And the problem is that if we, every 7 years, start over again, reset, reboot,
Right.
renew our relationship, we could continue to get rid of those places that really bring unhealthiness, bring it back up to a place to maintain the joy that we want.
Right. Now, Dr. Rosie, you've been involved in the healthcare industry for 35 years. So a lot of these principles that your husband's talking about, you've actually witnessed. So you and I had a conversation earlier today, and to clear this up for our viewing audience, now we know this isn't something you'll just do every 7 years, but you spoke to me about this is an ongoing process over the course of your marriage, that you'll take all of this and assess every 7 years. But would you share with us what that looks like?
I'd be happy to, Yvonne. It's interesting. Between us, Murray and I have had over 65 years of marriage.
Oh my God. Don't look at it.
And with that experience, you learn a lot. And so we have learned a lot about communication and negotiation and what has and has not worked. In terms of using this process every 7 years, you really need to use this process on a daily basis, because there are things that happen each day. And the idea is not to wait for 7 years to communicate about an issue, but rather building the skills and having a toolbox so that you can address those issues as they arise. However, the 7-year concept is the overall piece. We all know that on a day-to-day basis, you can't find something happens, you get upset, you deal with that.
Right.
But there are other things that happen in a marriage that sometimes get as Murray said, put under the carpet. It's something you're afraid to talk about. It's something that is so important to you that you're worried about the outcome if you bring it up. Those are the issues that are dealt with on a 7-year basis. And what we're looking at is helping people to identify what those issues might be in the stage in which they are. So what's an issue for Murray and I may be different from what would be an issue for you or somebody else. So it's helping them identify what those issues might be. Now, having this experience helps Murray and I to be able to deal with things. And what we did, I said we had 65 years of marriage, but we've only been married together for 2 years. And so
you learned a lot.
So we've learned a lot, and we went into it with our eyes open, which is easier to do when you have that experience. But what we did was, in our contract for our marriage, we've decided to renew it every 7 years, and we actually have that written into our contract. And so for us, this is something that we live on a day-to-day basis. And by example, I think we can help others learn how to develop these skills and then bring it into their own relationships.
Well, let's talk about two very common things, love and respect, because men need to be respected, and women think that they're respecting their husbands, but yet maybe they need something very different. And then the woman needs to be loved, and the husband says, well, I'm loving you. Didn't I tell you I loved you when I married you? But it means there's a lot more to it. Can you give us each some examples? Maybe we'll start with you, Dr. Rosie, and then we'll go to Rabbi Murray.
Love. What is love?
What is love?
We probably all have a different definition of what love is. But I think for women, it oftentimes is tied up with trust. You have to be able to trust that what your husband is telling you is the truth. That if he's out with other people, that he's not out with other people to be away from you or to not love you, but to, live his life. So we have to be, I think, really careful in defining what love is and letting our spouse, our significant other, our friend, know what that means to us and how it manifests itself. So I think that for men, it's really important for them to understand what is it that will make my wife feel safe, will make my friend trust me. And I think if we can go down that path, that we will be able to establish a real connection and have boundaries.
So these are the questions that must be asked.
Absolutely.
Respect. Let's talk about respect and what that means. Respect. I mean, obviously, both parties need respect, and both parties need to be loved. But one is more predominantly important to the one than the other.
To the different genders.
Yes, to the different genders.
Respect for a man, because a man has a very fragile ego, and his job, he sees himself as the breadwinner, etc. But in the society today, it's not like that. Women are, families have two people really working and making it work, whether it's working with the kids or in different aspects of the family, different aspects of bringing in finances, and all of these things become part of what allows the man to feel that he's respected, or to be in a place where circumstances render him in a situation where he loses that self-esteem he needs. And for the woman, a lot of times, she doesn't understand this because she's feeling love for him, so she feels that that's respecting him. And she never, demeans him or anything, so she feels that's good enough. But for a man, it's a lot more fragile than I think women understand. And by being able to be sensitive to that, especially because as we said, this is something that is really a stage-based way of looking at life. For instance, when you first get married and he's working hard and he's got some good money coming in, it's easy for her. He's feeling good about himself, and, she loves him and everything's great. Well, that's the first 7 years. It goes well. And then comes second 7 years, and they have some kids. They have now, 2-3 kids, and all this stuff's going on. She's stuck at home and, dealing with things that are very different than him. And he's finding that he doesn't feel comfortable around the diapers and this and that. And so now the relationship becomes more complicated. And with that, these aspects of love and respect need to be renegotiated. What does it look like for you? The tools that we give to people here are a lot of questions of what to ask in these particular periods of 7.
Right.
So that at a particular period, say, when the man is going through retirement,
Yes.
what are the questions that she should be asking him so that she could begin to reassess now at his age and in his circumstance what that means.
Yes.
When he loses his job and he's 35 years old and he has this tremendous sense of ambition and need to supply everything for his family, and how does that look? She needs to learn how to ask questions. He needs to learn how to ask questions of her when she's going through this phase, say in years 8 through that period of 7 years, and she's a soccer mom, and she finds herself totally running herself ragged and not getting enough sleep and everything. What are the questions that he needs to ask her so that she doesn't just feel like, well, she's doing her job and we're making it through, but that she really is loved? These are the kind of tools that we give to people in this.
Yes.
But I think the stage-based part is so important because we go through all these changes. And the fallacy that we've been given about marriage is that you just say, I do, and then everything else will work out. But it doesn't work out.
No, it doesn't.
Every 7 years, you not only have a different person, but you have different circumstances,
Right.
as I mentioned a few. What about when she's going through change of life? When he's going through midlife crisis?
Right.
What do you do when you get to the place where you have teenagers and they're being really rebellious? What about the stage that deals with, as I mentioned, retirement? But what about the stage when one becomes a caregiver for the other?
That's true.
And that's why we've divided this up into all.
I was going to ask you, tell us the how-tos on bringing this process into your marriage and how it changes the intimacy of your relationship and any relationship. And the first thing I want to preface with is that I see the two of you have a lot of fun together. You glow in each other's presence. You are so delighted to be near each other. You always want to be together. And that's something that I think everybody wants when they enter into a marriage relationship. And somehow they find themselves sometimes moving apart, which is very sad for both parties. So tell us, Dr. Rosie, the how-tos on bringing this process into your marriage and how it helps to create the intimacy that everyone is looking for.
Well, I believe strongly that you have to have a strong foundation, and that foundation is love and respect.
Okay.
I respect my husband. I respect what he does. I respect the decisions that he makes. And if there are times when I question those, I don't hold that in. I ask them about it. And we have a conversation. As a matter of fact, we talk all the time. Just last month I had surgery and I wasn't able to talk for a week.
Uh-oh.
That was the most
was
difficult
hard.
week for us. I was using a little whiteboard, and I learned that you actually think a lot faster than you can write.
That's true.
So for us, the practical application is on that day-to-day basis. It's staying connected. It's sharing my feelings. When something doesn't feel right, I don't hold it in. I talk to him about it, and we discuss it. And it's give and take. It's really using the tools that we've learned in terms of communication and negotiation so that we can speak our minds and feel good about it after the conversation is over.
So sometimes people don't ask the questions because deep down they're afraid to get the answer because maybe their safety and security is attached to the relationship staying the way that it is, and they feel if they rock the boat that could change, or the husband may feel a certain way if he, heaven forbid, he should say to his wife that she's gaining weight or doing something like that. That could be catastrophic for the next 3 months. So what would your advice be to people, not just couples, but to people in general, to help them overcome the fear of telling the truth and speaking their heart, not just their mind, but speaking their heart?
Well, for us, this whole concept of renewable marriages is one of first of all, being able to communicate, and that has to be the basis, that there is no such thing as not communicating your feelings, your fears, whatever it is that where you're at and what you need to, in order to make this a better marriage, if that's the goal. And so it's very different. When I think about people who are engaged, they ask all kinds of things, and they're not afraid to say anything about what they think about the person they're with. And that's the good thing. Well, it's like that. Every 7 years saying, okay, we're not married anymore as of today, so now we're engaged. Let's start asking each other as if we were just getting engaged.
Right.
And if you did that, what a different marriage it would be.
Well, this is really an exciting topic. I know that you're going to be doing half-day, weekend, and weekly seminars and workshops. And the book is also for sale. You can find the book on Facebook. You can find it at Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, and it's also an ebook. But Rabbi Murray, if you would tell us how our viewers today can get a hold of you and how they can find out about their workshops and how they can have a transformed marriage.
Sure. The web page is www.murraysilberling, MurraySilberling.com. And you can also find it on Facebook, the 7-year contract. The book is available on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. eBooks, it's available. And also my email is sills, SILLS, at QNET.com, QNet.com.
What a pleasure to have you, Rabbi Murray, and Dr. Rosie Silberling. It was an absolute delight to hear about fixing the institution of marriage and the 7-year contract and the tools so people can have healthy and happy marriages. So I'm your host. My name is Yvonne Beauvais. I'm your wellness correspondent on Here's to Your Health with Josh Lane. This is LA Talk Live Broadcasting Network, and we are more than just talk here at LA Talk Live. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with another edition of Here's to Your Health.
Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.